The note was taped to our mailbox, the font aggressively bold, screaming about unauthorized landscaping. I knew instantly it wasn't the legitimate HOA, our real one. Bless its heart, only sends passive-aggressive emails. This was Brenda, the self-appointed aesthetic compliance officer, and her latest power trip was about to collide with my wife, Sarah, who just happens to be a supervisory special agent with the FBI. The air hung heavy and thick, smelling like a mix of freshly mown St. Augustine grass and the anxiety that permeates perfect suburban life. Seriously, is there anything more soul-crushing than a neighborhood where every single mailbox has to be the exact shade of colonial beige? I looked out the kitchen window, watching Sarah pull into the driveway after a grueling 12-hour shift investigating white-collar crime. She looked exhausted, her tie slightly loosened, and I sighed, knowing the battle brewing outside was about to turn ugly. Why do people feel so entitled to police other people's lives? This whole saga started last month when we put up a simple, wooden, unpainted bird feeder, a tiny rebellion against the oppressive gray uniformity of our street. Brenda had taken it as a personal offense. She'd been driving her ridiculous, custom-painted white golf cart, which she called the Community Compliance Cruiser, past our house every hour on the hour. Her passenger, a meek, terrified man named Gary who was apparently her unpaid code enforcement intern, would frantically scribble notes on a clipboard every time she pointed. They weren't official, they weren't paid, and they certainly weren't authorized by the Rail Board. They were a self-appointed patrol, dedicated solely to making life miserable. My blood always boiled when I saw that cart. It was the visual embodiment of petty, unchecked authority. I remember telling Sarah, "One day, that woman is going to get a serious reality check." That day, it seemed, was today. Sarah hadn't even had time to shut off the engine when Brenda's cruiser squealed to a halt, completely blocking our driveway. Gary looked like he wanted the earth to swallow him whole. Brenda, however, stepped out with the triumphant swagger of a Roman centurion who had just captured Gaul. Her blonde bob was shellacked into place, and her tailored linen suit looked ready for a corporate takeover. I watched through the window, my heart starting to pound against my ribs. I knew Sarah was tired, and a tired FBI agent is not a patient agent. She stepped out, closing the car door with a sharp thud. Well, Brenda began, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "Look who finally decided to grace us with her presence, Mrs. Harrison. I'm afraid we have an emergency here." She gestured theatrically toward the bird feeder. "This, you see, is a Class B architectural infraction. It violates the rustic aesthetic purity covenant established in 1998. She thrust a clipboard at Sarah. Sarah didn't take the clipboard. She just stood there, hands on her hips, her gaze flat and unwavering. "Brenda," she said, her voice low, the kind of voice she uses when interrogating a CFO about securities fraud. "You are not a member of the official governing board. You have no legal authority. You are trespassing, and you are blocking a federal employee's access to her private residence." Brenda actually laughed, a brittle, obnoxious sound that echoed in the manicured silence of the street. "Oh, honey, don't try to scare us with your little government job. Gary and I are the eyes and ears of this community. We are the fake homeowners association patrol, and we enforce the rules because no one else has the spine to do it. That bird feeder is coming down now, or we will fine you into oblivion." Gary actually flinched at the word fine. "Is that so?" Sarah's smile was chilling. It wasn't friendly. It was the smile of someone who just found the hidden camera in the suspect's office. "You're going to fine me into oblivion, based on rules you invented, in a vehicle that is illegally blocking my path, while engaging in what can easily be construed as stalking and harassment?" She took a slow, deliberate breath, and I could practically smell the ozone crackling around her. "Let me be extremely clear. This ends right now, or the next person you talk to will have the actual authority you seem to crave." Brenda's smug expression didn't waver. "Go ahead. Call your little lawyers. We have photos. We have the covenant," she crowed, puffing out her chest. "Honestly, what are you going to do? Call the cops over a bird feeder? Are you seriously that hysterical?" That was it. The question was the trigger. Sarah dropped her right hand to her hip and, With a move so practiced it felt like a single frame from an action movie, she pulled out her leather wallet. The leather was worn smooth from years of use, and the distinct, polished gold shield inside caught the afternoon sun, flashing like a beacon of pure, unadulterated justice. It hit Brenda like a physical blow. "I don't need to call the cops," Sarah said, her voice now a sharp command that cut through the silence. "I am the authority. Special Agent Sarah Harrison, Federal Bureau of Investigation. And you, Brenda, and your little intern, are currently obstructing a federal agent on private property after months of documented harassment and attempted coercion under false pretenses." Brenda's face, usually the color of a slightly underripe peach, went the shade of a boiled beet. Gary's clipboard clattered to the asphalt. The air suddenly felt 10 degrees cooler. Brenda stammered, "Tage, this is a fake. This is not real. You can't just flash a badge." "Oh, but she can, Brenda." "Oh, yes, she can." Sarah didn't argue. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number I didn't recognize, speaking in the rapid-fire code of law enforcement. "I need 2 units and a tow truck at my location, 4210 Willow Creek. Immediate assistance requested. Situation involves 2 civilians impersonating authority figures and obstructing egress. Advise bringing a supervisor." She didn't even look at Brenda as she spoke. She was looking past her, down the street, as if the golf cart was already gone. The next few minutes were exquisitely painful for Brenda. The sounds of distant sirens grew closer, replacing the chirping birds and the gentle rustle of the trees. Brenda started spiraling, muttering about her rights and the unbelievable audacity. Gary, bless his heart, just stood there shaking, finally free of his clipboard duties. 2 patrol cars arrived, not the local, sleepy beat cops, but actual county sheriff units. A stern-faced female officer walked directly to Sarah, exchanged a crisp nod, and then turned her attention to the patrol. "Ma'am, we have a federal agent's complaint detailing impersonation and harassment. We need you and your vehicle to move immediately." When Brenda started arguing, throwing her hands up, shouting about the bird feeder again, "It's not regulation," the officer simply cut her off. "Anything you say can and will be used against you. Turn around and place your hands behind your back." The click of the handcuffs was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard in our overly quiet neighborhood. Brenda was hauled, protesting violently, into the back of a cruiser. Gary, thankfully, was only issued a stern warning and allowed to call a ride after his community compliance cruiser. The ridiculous golf cart was loaded onto the flatbed tow truck and taken away as evidence of illegal activity. As the sirens faded, Sarah finally turned to me, the setting sun catching the exhaustion in her eyes, but also a tiny flicker of fierce pride. She leaned against the car, the tension finally leaving her shoulders in a long, rattling exhale. She just dealt with a major organized crime bust and then came home to deal with a fake patrol drama. "I hate abuse of power, honey," she whispered. "Big or small." We walked inside, the silence feeling genuinely peaceful for the first time in months. The bird feeder remained firmly in place, a tiny monument to bureaucratic absurdity and swift federal justice. It was a perfect cinematic ending. The entitled bully had their power stripped away publicly and painfully. Brenda learned the hard way that when you pretend to be the law, you might just run into someone who actually is. It was a beautiful, inspiring piece of karma, proving that sometimes, even in the smallest of skirmishes, justice wears a badge.